Well, that should give you an idea of what's the game going to be like for the Mariners. They may have to deal with that atmosphere. Maybe not that kind of a playoff atmosphere, but that is what they're going to be up against. The Atlanta Braves. And welcome to the show. This is the Rooftop Mariner. I got the Jay's Trident podcast who has joined us. This is our second show together, and we've got some things to go through. We're going to go over some quick post stuff about the Boston Red Sox series, which unfortunately ended in defeat, 2 games out of 3. Then we're going to go over the preview of the Atlanta Braves, maybe talk about some roster moves on what the Mariners should do to improve the roster going forward. And then at the very ending, I did release a video recently. It was about how the Mariners ended the Boston Red Sox curse, and he is going to react to it and give me some, I don't know, reaction to it. That's really it. But how are you doing, Mr. Trident?
Good. Didn't love that last series in Boston. Got off to a great start, but day off is nice from the Mariners. Not going to lie, and looking forward to playing the Braves. I mean, it's going to be a tough series, but it should be fun.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the Braves doesn't seem like it's going to be easy. It's never easy to play in Atlanta, but yeah, that Boston series was just devastating, and it seems that the only highlight of that entire series was Cal Raleigh, who made very unusual history, where for the first time in the history of Fenway Park, in its 112-year existence, a switch hitter hit 2 home runs from each side of the plate, something that Jason Varitek couldn't even do. And he was a switch hitter for the Boston Red Sox, who, by the way, the Mariners had on their farm system. Now, how did he end up on the Red Sox? Well, you're going to have to find out later in this video. But anything else to note was, man, other than that game, you got La Piedra. Luis Castillo was uncharacteristically just getting rocked that game. And then Marco Gonzalez was Marco Gonzalez. And I will say this, do not let that 3-1 record fool you. Those 3 victories were kind of fluky. There was that Cleveland game where the umpire was kind of being nice to him with the strike zone. Then you had the Phillies where Bryce Harper wasn't even there. And then the Detroit Tigers where they're maybe up and down at best. And then the offense, well, at least they did score some runs, but the pitching was they were just getting rocked. And usually the complaint is the Mariners offense is the problem, but had the Mariners pitching done what they did on what they usually do, it would have at least been a 2 out of 3, maybe even a sweep. But what are your thoughts on it, Mr. Trident?
No, you hit the nail on the head with it. It's funny like you said, we always talk about the offense kind of letting the pitching down, and the offense wasn't terrible. And I mean, they were great in the first game. The second game would have been nice if they could have scored in more than just 1 inning. You know, they had the 4-run, I think 4th inning. Would have been nice to score more, but they did a pretty decent job. And then yesterday just got so out of hand early that I didn't even really break the game down because it was just such a mess. You know what I mean? It's hard to really get on. They were down 12-0 before they even, had a chance to blink. So I'm not going to get on any offensive performance yesterday. And yeah, like you said with Marco, that I didn't even realize he was 3-0 till the game started yesterday.
Nobody does.
Yeah. And like you said, Marco was Marco. I mean, it's the same thing every time. He's a back end starter that's got to live on the corners. When he gets outs, they're going to have to be hard hit outs that just, find gloves. Like Detroit makes sense. Detroit's not a very good lineup. It's a pitcher's ballpark. He was able to work around it. Boston's got a great lineup, and they're in an extreme hitter's park. And yeah, it was the perfect storm of. I didn't have much faith for Game 3. Game 2 is disappointing because I thought Castillo should have been better. They had a chance to win that game, and Castillo and Colton Wong were kind of the main culprits.
Just the fact that Jose Caballero has actually been their best second baseman really says a lot. But it also explains how much the Mariners are missing Dylan Moore, like utility player. And it's not even like his numbers really actually like show that he is actually a great contributor. But what he does, he gets on base, plays well, his defense is like very up and down. I remember how bad it was in 2019, but also he does produce quality outs. Like, what does that mean? He'll make some random like sacrifice fly. Well, he'll advance a runner from second to third. So, and he works the count.
Yep.
And before I even go further, we got Mr. Lem going, hello. Yes, he was the first. Congratulations. And yes, he acknowledges poor Luis Castillo just got
Poor us.
Poor us. But until, like you said, off of Colton Wong, until we get Dylan Moore back, I mean, this team is still going to be very up and down at best. But considering how problematic the offense has been, I just don't think that it's not as bad as everyone makes out to be. Like, this is not 2010.
No.
But having Dylan Moore would be nice, because Sam Haggerty can only do so much, and doesn't even seem like he's at his 2022 form. And it's also because he's been fighting off injuries. So that lack of utility play has been rough. And for the pitching, you just couldn't expect the starters to do that every single game, like La Piedra. And I mean, Logan Gilbert, he lucked out. And even the bullpen, as much as I don't like them, but statistically speaking, they've been fantastic, but they didn't. I mean, what could they really have done when the game was pretty much already lost? And then I heard that there was the windstorm also hurt them, which, well, I don't really think that's an excuse. Teams will find ways to play around it. Like T-Mobile Park is that pitcher's quote paradise, but other teams from other teams in the league, they figure it out.
Yeah, Taylor Trammell did have that. I don't know if you saw it yesterday. I thought it was a bomb, and the wind kind of brought it back. That would have made it 3-3. But all would have happened is they would have been down. Well, fine. You know what? We'll give them 3 runs and they lose 12-6. Like, exactly. There's no. They just got their butts kicked in yesterday. There's no. It wasn't the wind or anything. It might have helped get him a couple. For Trammell, it would have been nice for him to get the home run, but. It was just that's just bad pitching. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the one thing I've noticed on this offense. I think one of the issues is some guys do actually try to get on base. Like Caballero tries to work the count. JP Crawford works the count. But then you got like Julio, that the way he swings, he looks like he just wants to crush that ball. And it's like, you're just trying too hard. Just try to get on base, especially when your batting average is a bit too low. At least try to do what JP Crawford does, is get on base. And that's something the M's really got to adjust on the offense, is they don't necessarily have to go for bombs. Now, they have the talent to go for bombs. There's no doubt about that. But there are times where it's just not necessary. Like the win game, they should have tried to play the small ball rather than trying to bank that Fenway Park would give them home runs, which it did for the most part. But for a game like that, not ideal, especially with the big wind. The big wind, and that Boston's actually a decent team competing well in the East.
Yeah, like you said, and you can see the good of what they're playing for the long ball. On Monday it worked out. You got the 2 bombs from Cal. Gino goes deep, and you can see when those guys are hot, they can play. If Julio gets on a hot streak, Teoscar Hernandez can get hot. This team could score a ton of runs. I could see them having 14, 15 run games. They're that kind of team. But like you said yesterday, when you got a little wind or something like that, you're playing for that 3-run home run. It can also just lead to just some really, really sluggish performances. I think game 2 is actually a good example. Trammell hits that 2-run home run. Teo gets the triple. They have that big inning. But then the rest of the game, they can't get anything going. That after they scored the 4 runs, Ty France led off the next inning with a double. And I'm not the biggest small ball guy, but right there, you've got to find a way. He was on third with 1 out. Kelenic was up. You have got to find a way to get him home. I don't care what it takes, but even a little dribble or just something play, they can get him home. Maybe you take the lead. Maybe Castillo's a little more sharp with a 1-run lead, and you win that game. So they got the big inning. They get the big home run, but then it seems like they struggle sometimes getting that.
Doing the little things.
Yeah.
I don't I don't even recall this team even bunting at all this season. Like one time I saw Taylor Trammell try and it looked awful. It was like pop-ups, but they really should invest into bunting because the team can run. They do have some of them do have the speed to bunt and make something happen, but it's just puzzling why this team doesn't really bunt at all when can't really just go for homers. Like it's exactly why the Moneyball Oakland A's failed. Not only did they never steal bases, they also never really bunted.
Well, and I always thought the problem for the A's philosophy was I think it can win in the regular season a lot, but you get to the postseason and and I'm all for it on base. Get your walks, get the line moving. But when you get to the playoffs, you're facing pitchers that are throwing strikes. You're not playing against I don't know who's a really bad DA's rotation. You know what I mean? You're facing the best of the best. These guys are going to pump strikes in there. So you're going to have to find a way to manufacture runs for the most part, especially against the good teams. Now, against Oakland, against Colorado, are they going to be fine? Yeah, of course. Those teams are just bad. They're going to be able to bash those teams around the park. But in Fenway against a really good team, you got to find it. You can't let those opportunities, go by the wayside.
Can't let them slide. And I think it explains well why the Mariners just leave so many on base is because of their lack of strategic planning, which like Scott Service, as great as he can, like he helps with Jerry Dipoto really well, bringing in home run hitters, but he just can't play the small ball. And the team absolutely does have potential to play small ball and home run ball at the same time.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I think they do have a good combination of it, and I'm all for the long ball. Like hit as many home runs as you want to hit. I'm totally fine with that. But you've got guys like JP, Colton Wong that should be able to be pretty good small ball players. Even like Kelenic, like he's got good speed. There's no reason he can't, get something down there to get that run in. You know what I mean? The only guys really like Ty, Gino, Cal, those are not going to be small ball guys. But like even Julio, with a runner at second, nobody out, maybe Julio should be trying to not just to move the runner over, but button for a base hit, something, and maybe that gets your confidence going a little bit too. So they've got decent speed. Even AJ Pollock's a fairly fast player. So
give some confidence for the next batter too, where if someone's on the third base, for example, if someone bunts before like Gino Suarez is up, all he has to do, worst case scenario, is just pop it up as long as he doesn't strike out, because he does that a lot too.
And that is part of the problem why they probably don't do it a lot. They do have a lot of strikeout guys. I feel like Trammell, like I love, but he's got big holes in the swing. Gino, Cal's a strikeout guy, Teoscar. So it's kind of a weird mix where it's like they've got the guys to do it, they've got the pop, and then they've got some strikeout guys. So, but I'm with you what you said earlier. I don't think the offense is going to be like it's not 2010. This is not like a just listless.
Eric Burns pulling back his bat.
Yeah, exactly. Or, Casey Kochman leading the team in home run or something. I don't know if he did, but something like that. There's legitimate play. And that's, I said about my video yesterday, it's part of the good news that, they're a game under 500, but they've been doing it with like 6 hitters that are well below their career averages right now. So, they can just get those guys back a little bit. I think they'll be fine. It's more frustrating because I know the offense should be better more than, oh no, this offense is bad. You know what I mean?
No, the talent is there. And speaking of leader of home runs, if it wasn't for Russell Branyan, who the Mariners brought in,
that's right,
in the middle of the season, it would have been Franklin Gutierrez with 12 home runs. Ugh. He would have been the home run leader.
That team only hit 101 homers. There's actually a YouTube video up of all their 2010 home runs. They had 101.
Really depressing to watch.
Yeah, and a lot of them like 9-0, and they're down. Someone's hitting solo home runs. So,
I think I saw Michael Saunders hit one of the last home runs of the season, and you didn't even hear anyone cheering. It was like, yay! But who cares? We suck.
I actually went to a game in Seattle in 2010.
Yeah, that must have been fun. Well, I think that's it for the Sox series. We didn't really say much other than that pitching was uncharacteristic, and offense, they got to find ways to go around those things, especially the wind. But now we got an upcoming series. going up. It is the Atlanta Braves. They are going to Atlanta to play the Atlanta Braves. Let me see refresh myself how the Braves are doing.
Good.
Looking at the standings. Yep, I would expect they are division leading 27-16 over Miami and the Mets, who, by the way, have been disappointing, but don't want to go into it too much. But 27-16, and let's take a look at the matchups for the Atlanta Braves game. It's going to be Bryce Miller. He's going to be starting against Elder, who is 3-0 with a 1.94 ERA, and just by looking at that, as great as Bryce Miller has been, very historic, only giving up 1 run in just his 3 starts, which is also something that hadn't been done in over 100 years. But just in my opinion, just looking at it alone, I think this might be the game where Bryce Miller will actually be tested, because you're going up against someone that's not going to give up a lot of runs, and you're going up against the Atlanta's offense.
In a hitter's park too. So that's gonna. This is, I don't want to say this is kind of the first big test. Like Oakland's awful. Detroit's offense isn't very good. Truthfully, Houston's offense right now is not very good either. I'm not taking away from Bryce at all. He's been amazing, but he's not going to run a point. What is it, 3.80 ERA all season long? Eventually, that's
it's impossible.
Yeah. So there'll be a good test. Like I'm excited for it. I'm not trying to sound down on Miller at all. I'm excited to watch the game, but that's going to be a tough one.
It's going
They're
to
all going to be tough. Atlanta's great.
And Atlanta is second in the league in home runs with 74, just behind Tampa. And in runs scored, Atlanta is 6th, while the Mariners are somehow miraculously sitting at number 15, considering all the woes that they have had this season, where half the players are underperforming, and we still have injuries, but still top 15, which is, I will still take it.
Yeah.
But pitching's going to have to somehow find a way to contain the offense. So Bryce Miller, I expect him to be completely tested this time, because just like George Kirby last year, as great as he was, there were times he was getting tested, because it's just a matter of time they figure him out. And we got to look at it too, that, like you said, it was Oakland that he played against, and then it was a banged up Astros team that doesn't even have Altuve yet, and some of their players are also underperforming. And then the Tigers, which they're not exactly. And don't forget Pitchers Park.
Yeah.
And now the 20th, what are we looking at for this one? We've got...
It's a pretty hitter-friendly park, I think, in Atlanta.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah.
And we got Logan Gilbert, and they haven't even announced it. So, and the thing that concerns me is Logan Gilbert has been very up and down. As in case nobody has noticed, he's 1-2 with a 3.91 ERA. So he had some very unusual games. And then for Sunday, who do we got next? Or this is the final game of the series, George Kirby. So with the pitching wise, you would think that it really should be best case, at least a 2 out of 3. Now, I would love a sweep, but against Atlanta, I wouldn't really hold my breath on it, but would be nice to get 2 out of 3, especially with that lineup of pitchers. Like you got Bryce Miller, although I think he is going to be heavily tested. Got Logan Gilbert, who is a capable pitcher, but has shown some streakiness. And then you got George Kirby, where the only issue with him is he is known to not get much run support. So, I mean, we all know it, that Braves are not going to be an easy team. And any other thoughts you've got on the Atlanta Braves?
Who is it? Who do we know who's pitching for Atlanta on Sunday? I know you said Saturday was to be determined. Do they have a Sunday?
Still to be determined. They are not pulling all their cards out.
I know we miss is it Strider? I know he pitched against Texas, so we'll miss him. That's good news. I mean, we'll have to kind of see who Atlanta announces for their pitching. Hopefully, maybe someone's, not room for injury, but hopefully maybe someone's a little banged up and we're getting some call-ups to face or something like that. I think he hit the nail on the head with it. I think Logan Gilbert has been a little inconsistent. I mean, even the last start against Detroit, I think his final line was okay. I thought he looked a little worse. I thought he labored through that game pretty much. That felt like a game against a better lineup that they probably would have gotten 4 or 5 runs against him. He was dominant against Texas. He deserved to win in that game, and then the offense shut down after the Ty France home run. So it's just fine. Like Logan is capable of shutting that lineup down. I think that's the good news for the Mariners is that all 3 pitchers are capable of shutting down that lineup. You don't have Marco going, which is nice.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a tough test. It's like you said, like my hope is 2 out of 3. I'll take any series win. That's kind of always the goal for me because if you can win 2 out of 3 in every series, you're going to be in contention when it's all said and done. A sweep would be great, but the Mariners could get swept too. It's not out of the realm of possibility going down to Atlanta, and you could just find yourself in 3 dogfights there, and they could get you.
Well, that would, and I just looked at the roster, just like the point you brought up that they are suffering injuries. We got Max Fried of Atlanta, who is on a 15-day IL, and then Kyle Wright is also on a long-term IL, 60 days. So that makes sense why there is a to be determined. But we'll have to see who they got. Maybe they got some prospects under their arms, under their belt, that could basically do what Bryce Miller did. Now, that's probably a very extreme possibility, but knowing Atlanta, they are known to produce their players in the farm systems, and it goes all the way back to the 90s, where they found the Chipper Jones. I wonder if Tom Glavine was also part of that farm, because I know Greg Maddux wasn't, because he was part of the Cubs for the longest.
He Smoltz was in Detroit, I think, and came over. I mean, even there though, like Smoltz didn't come up in their system, but they kind of made them. So even though it wasn't technically their system, they still get credit for, you know what I mean, kind of developing those guys. And they've always been good.
Maddux came from Chicago, was already an established starter. Yeah, then you had Tom Glavine was through farm. He was in Atlanta since pretty much day one. And John Smoltz was also, from Detroit in the minors, but then there was a little trade that happened. So, So Atlanta's no joke. And we totally expect a really tough series. So hopes It's
one of those series that this is why obviously I wish the Mariners had a better record. That goes without saying, but if the Mariners were like 23-20 right now or 24-19, I'd be like, you know what? Like, I just want to see competitive baseball. I'm okay with what happens here. Atlanta's a team I can see winning a World Series, but just being a game under 500, you kind of need to win at least one of the games. You don't want to get swept, get 4 games below. So that's what's kind of frustrating too a little bit is I'd love to sit back like, hey, I'm just going to enjoy this series. It's against a great team. Whatever happens. But, kind of need them to maybe win 1 or 2 of these.
No, they're going to have to. And then especially you want some kind of momentum going to Oakland. So that way they'll have the momentum to go ahead and just sweep the living life out of them. And it's going to be 4 games after the Atlanta series where they're going to play Oakland. And I totally expect a sweep against them since Oakland's pretty much they're in a very strange situation.
That might be the worst team ever. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. That team their team ERA is 7. I mean, that's insane. And then after Oakland, they get 3 against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's playing decent, so I don't want to knock them, but I think they're overperforming a little bit. So if you can somehow get 2 out of 3 in Atlanta, which I don't think is impossible, I think the Mariners have the pitchers to do it. Then you get 7 games where you maybe have a chance to go 5-2, 6-1 here and start to get yourself, 4, 5, 6 games over 500. So, that would be a huge momentum boost if they can get 2 out of 3 here. I don't want to look too far ahead. You never know, but Oakland and Pittsburgh, and I think the Yankees are in that homestand too. But Oakland and Pittsburgh should be winnable. I'm not trying to knock the Pirates, but
it's going to be the Yankees. It's going to be the Yankees and then going to Texas. So the Atlanta series will be extremely critical because if you do secure at least 2 out of 3, or maybe if you drop 2 and then just win your last game at least, then you can bring that momentum into the Oakland and Pittsburgh, and then get that boost so you can be ready for the big boys, the
Yep,
Yankees and the Rangers.
exactly.
But I think that is going to do for the Atlanta. But now roster moves. Now we have seen it where we've got Colton Wong, who's been underperforming, which I wasn't surprised at all. It's making me miss Jesse Winker as if I already did. But personally, I never had a problem with Jesse Winker that much. I think everyone just overreacted about him. Now, is he an angel? No. But when he played, at least when he was batting, the man still got on base, even when he was underperforming compared to his all-star season. And then Toro didn't like him either, but he was clutch once in a while.
He
So,
he did. He would randomly hit. There's been a couple games where I've been like, we could use one of those Abe Toro random home runs out of nowhere right now.
and he was that kind of guy. And Jesse Winker would have been perfect for the offense with the designated hitter because right now it's just AJ Pollock who barely wakes up with his bat. But luckily with Taylor Trammell back, that's where the outfield is a little bit more flexible. But
Mm-hmm.
that DH spot is really hurting because
Yep.
they were really banking on Cooper Hummel to get something going after that good spring training, but hasn't really done much at all. But it makes me wonder, like, what should the Mariners do? I'm not saying that to make some trades, but hopefully in the hopes that we get Dylan Moore back. And now I'm wondering when he's ever going to come back at this point.
He's out on a. I think he is in Everett for a rehab assignment. I don't know
He
if that
is. I
starts
just
tonight.
realized
Yeah,
that. So
yeah. I
we'll
don't
have to.
know what
But they didn't really come up with a legitimate
ETA.
ETA. No, they didn't. They said, the last real update was other than he needs to do Everett, it was Mariners decided Dylan Moore needs to pull back from rehab assignment, but that was just 4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
But
That was
other than that,
him and Munoz were both going to be back. It's why baseball injuries are always so tricky. And I never buy into like, oh, this guy will be back. Like, because Robbie Ray was going to be back early May. Munoz just needed the minimum 15 days, and it was just precaution. He was going to be back. Dylan Moore was going to be back mid-April, and now we're looking. I think they were talking about Munoz rehab assignment at the end of the month, so we're looking early June. I'm thinking maybe Dylan Moore, maybe the next road trip would be when he would be activated because he's kind of catch up for spring training at bats too. So then obviously Robbie's out for the season. So, it's always one of those injuries. You can never believe that initial report of, oh, he's fine, just a little temporary thing. He'll be right back.
well, I think so. Here's what I just saw. So I'm reading it from Twitter. It says by the Everett Aqua Sox, we have another rehab appearance by Dylan Moore this week. He is scheduled to be in the Aqua Sox uniform this Thursday, which is today. The game has been in progress. Then he's scheduled to be there Saturday and Sunday. So maybe if he does do really well, then maybe, just maybe, he will maybe get a chance to play against Oakland, and maybe, might as well just throw him against Oakland because they're not really pitching well. That could be another rehab game. But today it looks But today it looks like he went 0 for 1, but he got a walk, and that was just after 4.5 innings of work.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be a slow transition. And then, so offense, I think as soon as Dylan Moore comes back, I think the offense can get going, even though I'm still not worried about the offense. They just need to just take it up a notch, because if they at least do even slightly better, this offense can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, I was surprised when you mentioned they were 15th in runs scored, actually. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was going to be a little lower than that. So that's good news that they're doing this. And Dylan Moore will give them good positional flexibility because he can play. He can play every position and probably could play catcher too, honestly, if he had to. And you can put him at third base and Gino can DH. He can play shortstop against lefties, so JP gets a day off against lefties. Might even just, unfortunately, the way Colton Wong's been, he might just need to play second base every day. But, he can play there. He can even play first base and give Ty a chance to DH. So that's where I think it's so important with Dylan Moore getting back in there. I don't want to sound like, people looking up at Dylan Moore going, you think this guy's the savior? Like, no. But I think, like kind of like you said, I think it's kind of going to be a big boost to the offense. I think it's going to allow it's allow that DH position to improve a little bit because you can kind of move other guys around and in there as well. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, think about it in the past where Mariners have had previous success with utility players. You had Willie Bloomquist. Now he just happened to be in with the Mariners at the worst possible time. I think any other era he would have had a bigger name for himself. Then you also had Mark McLemore, who was an amazing amount of versatility with playing shortstop, infield, and outfield. And then you had Rich Amaral back in the '90s,
Yeah.
who played also very well in multiple positions, including filling in for Ken Griffey Jr. when he did hurt his hand off a foul ball in 1996. Now, the only reason why some diehards will know that is you saw that in that video, You Gotta Love These Guys, where Griffey
Yep.
hit that random foul ball. I think it was against the Blue Jays, and then he got hurt. And then it showed Jay Buhner going, yep, we're screwed.
I remember that. I remember that. I
It
remember
was more
those.
like, I think it was more like, oh, here we go again.
Yep. Yep. But no, I do. I think more will be a big boost. I'm kind of with you. I'm more frustrated with the offense than I am worried about the offense. Like even Julio, and they're streaky. These are all streaky hitters. I think they're gonna have a stretch here somewhere where they have like a 10, 20 game stretch where you're like, this is the best offense in baseball. What have we been upset about? And then they'll slide back a little bit. I think it's just gonna kind of be their MO a little bit. But I think they'll be fine.
Well, the other thing too is other than this offense, I think much of it like 2010 Mariners pitching staff or even 2003 Mariners, they would have killed for this kind of offense. Or Lou Piniella's 2002 Mariners would have killed for this offense because with that pitching they had back then, the team would have been no problem. Because there are games I have seen where sometimes an average offense can be mitigated by pitching. Now, it's insane for me to say, and it's some of the reason why some YouTubers on the Mariners don't really like my takes because they say, well, the Mariners pitching, they're top 5 in the league, which is true. Now, let me just go to starters because I'm in this website. It's a great website, MLB.com. In starters, their starting rotation surprisingly is number 9. And I think that is contributed to some struggles by Logan Gilbert, Marco Gonzalez, Chris Flexen, and even La Pietra. Like, what happened? And then let's go to the bullpen, shall we say? They are actually the best bullpen in baseball.
Is that by ERA?
That's by ERA. That's the thing. I think a lot of M's fans, I would like to say, they just look at strictly at ERA, but some they don't see. 7 blown saves, not great in extra innings. And I know they're going to say, well, it's because there was a man on second base. Well, if your pitching's that good, then that should be no problem. And plus, M's fans can't say that because in 2021, that's where a lot of their wins were coming from that random extra inning game. So don't blame the rules for that.
Well, and they get the same role. And truthfully, the runner at second doesn't count against your ERA. So
that's why I think in that case, that number, and I don't like that. I think that number, that earned run should count because it gives a much more honest statistics on how this bullpen's doing. Like maybe someday I'll actually calculate it based on who was on second base. But then again, that's like everyone anyway.
And it's a perfect example is like on Sunday, when Brash came in and he hit a guy, walked another guy. Technically, he didn't give up an earned run in that outing, So his ERA went down on Sunday. So that's where ERA too can. Now, I mean, it ended up going to I think Gabe Spire, someone got charged, so it did go to the bullpen ERA. But yeah, ERA can be deceiving. I like the bullpen. I think it's good, but I do think that they've had some bad moments in some clutch situations.
And I just feel like that nobody just wants to admit it. For some reason, they just don't. And I think it's largely because Matt Brash's pitching looks really cool, which it does. He looks like he's about to throw his leg into the backstop.
Oh, yeah. The stuff is amazing, but the problem is, he's not locating that slider, and that fastball is great, but major league hitters can be like, hey, you're not throwing your slider for a strike. We can sit on 98. No problem.
Just to learn the reflexes better. And that's where I'm going to say a hot take here is as much as Matt Brash is fun to watch, he's really fun. The way he pitches is really cool. Like sometimes I would love to pitch like that, but for what he's doing, I hate to say it, send the man down. I mean, we just have to because you got to get him developed, got to get his confidence back, and someone tell him, like you said, tell him to mix up his pitches. And I know some friends of mine that say, "Oh, well, it was just bad luck." It's like, well, no,
Yeah, I
like maybe
mean,
it's because he's
I think
not mixing them up
there's,
well.
yeah, like I think there's been some bad luck for Brash, like for sure. But it's also like, and the strikeouts are there, so I get why they like him because you can, if you've got bases loaded, one out, yeah, he might be your best strikeout guy. But and I know his walks are low, but I think that's a little deceiving too because I think the command has been poor. So it's like, yeah, he's not walking guys necessarily, but he's also not
But
throwing
it's
quality
traded for
strikes.
hits,
Exactly,
so
exactly.
it comes at a
So,
big cost.
yep, yep. And no, I talked about that in my video the other day. I was kind of like, they need to give him a break from the high leverage spots for a while if they're not going to send him down. Like yesterday, he pitched in like the fourth inning or something like that.
When the game was pretty much over, so it was like
Yeah.
that was a more ideal situation. But Scott just keeps using him in those high leverage
Hmm.
situations when they haven't used like other guys that can pitch just as well. And I'm not even saying Trevor Gott, but maybe like Gabe Spire or Justin
Hmm.
Topa in the high leverage. But I
Yeah, they
think
like to use. Yeah, go ahead.
you like to use
Oh, no, I was gonna say that they seem to like. I've noticed they will have Topa start an inning. They like to have him start. Brash is their guy that they always seem to use when they need that strikeout. Which, like run like the Detroit game on Sunday is a perfect example. They were kind of looking for a strikeout, and I get it. Like Javi Baez was coming up. That's someone that you would think Brash has a pretty good advantage over. And I think he did get Baez out, but it's just so I get where they're coming from a little bit with it, with trying to get those strikeouts, but it's just not and like I said, the ERA and Brash's ERA I think is fairly high, but think about the inherited runners he's allowed to score too. So it's not just the fact that like the ERA is 4 point whatever. He's also allowed a lot of inherited runners. And I'm with you. Bring in Topa with a few guys on, give him a shot for it. Um, you know, I think they've done. Or what about Saucedo's looked pretty good recently? Give him a shot against a big lefty. Who else am I missing? You got 110 down there who's been all right.
110, Prelander Baroa, and Emerson
Mm-hmm.
Hancock. And I think I've noticed that Prelander Baroa has been moved to the bullpen
Yeah.
for a specific reason because I think they're just trying to get him ready. And I think maybe just throw him in against Oakland. Man,
Yeah.
Oakland is like the perfect punching bag right now for everyone. Until
Mm-hmm.
Oakland finally says, hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's just play troll this time.
Right.
But
That's my
that's,
concern with Oakland.
yeah, me too. That's why I was nervous for that series. But yeah, give Prelander Baroa a chance and send down Matt Brash to Tacoma. Let him someone remind him to just don't be afraid to use his slider once in a
Yeah.
while because he does have a nice one, but doesn't seem to use it. So yeah, Prelander Baroa. And I would also say call up Emerson Hancock after at least a couple starts, good starts
Yeah.
in Arkansas. And that way we could make flexible decisions with Marco Gonzalez. At least put him as maybe a long relief, but now let me
Well,
look
then,
up his contract because he does have a pretty hefty contract, which is what
yeah, it
they're
goes
not
up
getting rid
next
of
year
him.
too.
Oh yeah, and I think you were going to say something too.
I was gonna say, you could do. I was gonna say a couple things. Going back to Brash, last thing I'll say on Brash, I would also be interested. Let him start the inning with nobody on base. I wonder if he's nervous to throw the slider for wild pitches. You know what I mean? With guys on base and he's not having confidence. Maybe switch him and Topa if you want. Have Brash start the inning and have Topa be the guy. But then I was also going to say with Marco, what you could do if you want it, like you said, I think Hancock, you want to see a couple more quality starts. You can bring him up and you're going to want to limit those guys' innings a little bit. Bryce Miller and Emerson Hancock. Marco can kind of be your, I don't know what role you'd call that, but he can make a start and then back to the bullpen, make a start there. You know what I mean? Where he kind of helps limit the other guys' innings a little bit, something like that.
Well, not that I'm a big fan of limiting the pitchers because I'm a
But
boomer
they're going
about it.
to.
But at least if they're going to do something like that, at least manage your bullpen more properly. Now, going to Marco Gonzalez, I looked up his contract. He has a club option, luckily a club option in 2025, and I don't think the Mariners are going to pick that up at all. I think they're just going to let him go, opt out of his contract, and maybe give him a cheapo. That's what they would probably do, but I think until then, I think he's going to the bullpen as soon as we got Emerson Hancock possibly getting called up. And there has been hesitations for him just because he did struggle just a little bit last year and had a rough start this year, along with every other pitcher. But I think the time is now where let's experiment these pitchers and let's let Jerry Dipoto prove himself that not going for these big name free agent pitchers was actually a good idea. Show it.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Well,
let the kids play.
Yeah, and Bryce Miller's paid off. I mean, he had his numbers were not great this year in Double-A, and I remember reading some stuff that they said he was working on some pitches and everything, and that's why the numbers weren't great. And, right now it's paying off. They needed, someone to replace Robbie Ray, someone that has strikeout stuff, someone that could be more than a Chris Flexen or a Marco Gonzalez, and it's paying off with Bryce Miller. And, you don't want to wait around and find out that, you bring up Hancock too late or something, and you wonder what could have been if you made the decision earlier.
Definitely have to make it, because especially where the Mariners are still in the heat of that playoff race. Well, it's May, but you just don't want to build yourself into a bigger hole.
Yep.
But I think we've covered as much as we can, but we got to get moved. We got to get rolling to the last part of my segment. Is I made a recent video of how the Mariners ended the Boston Red Sox curse, and we got Jay Trident. He is going to react to it as we go. Now, and I got to do this quickly because he did mention to me that he's got to go quickly. He's got some other obligations, so I don't want to burn too much of his time.
No worries.
All right. So let's go to the video. It's going to be a 9-minute video.
Cool.
And then we'll just go and react to it. So we're going to share the screen. And action. In 2004, the Boston Red Sox won the World Series for the first time since 1918, putting an 86-year-long curse away after many years of disappointment since trading away Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees, sparking the curse of the Bambino.
Little roller up along first, behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
The 2004 season was one of the most incredible runs in Red Sox history. And what if I were to tell you that it was the Mariners that helped the Red Sox break the curse? Well, here I am to explain. And before I get into this video, hit that like and subscribe button and the notification bell for future content. And also, this video is sponsored by Modern Exterior Solutions. Maybe the commercial break over to watch a baseball on TV. And you might want to make a great impression on your friends that are coming to your house. Well, I mean, the Mariners have been known to like... Okay, I'm going to mute this. I mean, the Mariners have been known to... What have they been known to? Been a charity organization for the Yankees, the Red Sox, and even the Astros. Modern Rooftop.
Yep.
Off your first use. Link and information in the description. In 1996, the Seattle Mariners were struggling to compete for the playoffs while chasing the Texas Rangers for the division or chasing the Orioles for the wild card.
Yep.
The Mariners were short of a third baseman due to the injury of Russ Davis.
Russ Davis.
Started at third base for a game. Nobody remembers an injury with a collision.
That's right. Edgar went back to third.
At one point, Jay Buhner even offered to play third baseman, but Lou Piniella declined. Ultimately, on August 29th, 1996, the Mariners traded for third baseman Dave Hollins with the Minnesota Twins for a player to be named later.
For the ball game, the Mariners acquired Dave Hollins from the Minnesota Twins. You can see the numbers on Hollins, but the important thing is he is a third baseman and a switch hitter. That gives Lou Piniella almost an extra bat in the lineup.
And that happened to be David Ortiz. The only notable thing he did for the Mariners was when he showed off his power in his bat in Wisconsin.
impressing Alex Rodriguez.
The future of baseball right in front of him.
Dave Hollins did contribute well for the Mariners in the month of September to help the Mariners close the division gap, with the Texas Rangers down to 1 game. But the Mariners would fall apart in the final week of the regular season, missing out on the division and the wild card. Dave Hollins was let go after the 1996 season since Russ Davis was back from injury for the 1997 season.
Remember, you gotta love these guys where it was after those back-to-back home runs, and then Dave Niehaus, he immediately shuts it down. It's like, yeah, it was a fantastic finish. They won 10 straight victories, but they didn't want to talk about the last part where Mark McGwire just buried them the very next day, and then lost the series to California and lost to Oakland, and Texas got hot. Something you got to love these guys just didn't want to admit.
No.
In the 1997 season, the Mariners led the division for the entire season, with the best offense in baseball led by Ken Griffey Jr., Alex Rodriguez, Edgar Martinez, and Jay Buhner. The team even had a solid starting rotation of Randy Johnson, who reemerged after his injured 1996 season. Jamie Moyer and Jeff Facero also contributed well in the rotation, but the team was plagued by the worst bullpen in baseball, led by Bobby Ayala and Norm Charlton. A game that really stood out to best explain the futility of the bullpen was on July 30th. The Mariners had a 7-2 lead against the Boston Red Sox, but Bobby Ayala, Norm Charlton, and Edwin Hurtado contributed to a meltdown where the Boston Red Sox would erase the deficit and win the game. Desperate for bullpen help, the Mariners turned to their farm system and traded away several key players. On top of the Mariners trading away Jose Cruz Jr. to the Toronto Blue Jays for Mike Timlin and Paul Spoljaric, Mariners traded away prospects catcher Jason Varitek and pitcher Derek Lowe for Heathcliff Slocum, who was already struggling with the Boston Red Sox to the point that he was nearly cut from the team. But Red Sox general manager Dan Duquette held on to him with the hopes of increasing any kind of value, since he was previously an all-star in the 1995 season with the Philadelphia Phillies. And luckily for the Red Sox, the Mariners caved.
Yeah, I think had Heathcliff Slocum did not get that all-star appearance, I don't think Woody Woodward would have went for that.
Well, that was back when that was, people really cared about that too. GM's value, like, oh, the guy was an all-star and did this. So different times too.
Ago.
Yeah, I know. Different times.
Oh yeah, and I remember that's what I reminded all of you about the whole Jason Varitek. The Mariners traded him to Boston for a bullpen pitcher.
These expensive moves for the Mariners arguably stabilized the bullpen somewhat to help them win the American League West, giving them the ticket for the 1997 playoffs.
3-2 pitch. He got it.
Heathcliff Slocum got a save?
He was good in 97, if I remember correctly. It was 98 where he
However,
was
they would ultimately go
was
down to the
awful.
Baltimore Orioles in the American League Division Series in 4 games. Heathcliff Slocum would eventually be let go after an atrocious 1998 season.
Yeah.
In the first half of David Ortiz's time with the Twins, he split time in the major leagues and the minor leagues, displaying great potential as a power hitter for the future. He eventually got consistent playing time after the 1999 season. Although he played decent for the Twins, including helping the Twins get to the American League Championship Series in 2002, Ortiz suffered some injuries, and the Twins attempted to trade David Ortiz but couldn't find anyone to trade with. Eventually, the Twins released him after the 2002 season and was picked up by the Boston Red Sox for the 2003 season. Jason Varitek was drafted by the Mariners as a first-rounder in 1994, and he played well in the minor leagues while Derek Lowe spent time in the minor leagues from 1991 to 1997 with mixed performances. He eventually got playing time in 1997, but did not pitch well in 9 starts with the Mariners. After they were traded to Boston, Jason Varitek quickly got playing time starting in the 1998 season and would emerge as a regular catcher for the Boston Red Sox, and even a 3-time All-Star throughout his time in Boston. Derek Lowe eventually developed into a closer at first from 1999 to 2001, and eventually emerged as a starter in the 2002 season.
Lanky right-hander is ready. 2-2 pitch is swung on and bounced to second base. Sanchez to Offerman, a no-hitter.
With Jason Varitek and Derek Lowe developing into core contributors to the Red Sox on top of stars Pedro Martinez, Manny Ramirez, and Nomar Garciaparra, the Red Sox finally seemed that they have put it together to compete at least for the playoffs. The key move that seemed to have finally put them into the playoffs was picking up David Ortiz, who was recently cut by the Twins. David Ortiz at the time had a career year, putting up 31 home runs, 101 RBIs, a .288 batting average, along with a .369 on-base percentage. With all these combined contributions, this was enough to edge the Mariners by 2 games for the wild card spot to make the playoffs. The Red Sox edged out of the Oakland A's in the American League Division Series and took the Yankees to 7 games.
Ortiz gets into one to right. This one is at the wall and gone. David Ortiz greets David Wells with a first pitch home run to right. It's 5-2.
But with 5 outs away, a collapse occurred, and Aaron Boone eventually belted the game-winning home run.
Before we even go to that, there was that controversial moment where Grady Little, manager of the Red Sox at the time, he kept in Pedro Martinez, and they were saying, no, go to the bullpen. And that was one of those crapshoot things of like, well, what if the bullpen messed it up too? So I think I'm going to say that I did not blame Grady Little for trusting Pedro Martinez at the time.
I didn't either. I thought it was overblown. I get it, but I have no problem riding your best pitch, especially Pedro. I mean, and that bullpen, if I'm not mistaken, was not that great for Boston that year. I could be wrong on that, though.
I think that bullpen even included Mike Timlin, who was on the Red Sox. Little do people know.
Leading by 3 as Boone hits it to deep left. That might send the Yankees to the World Series.
Brett Boone's brother, Aaron Boone's brother was there next to Joe Buck.
In the 2004 offseason, the Boston Red Sox made an attempt to trade for Alex Rodriguez, who the Rangers were trying to get rid of after the 2003 season. Initially, it looked like it was going to be a done deal, but however, the MLB Players Association vetoed the trade due to A-Rod taking too much of the pay cut in order to go to Boston. He was ultimately traded to the heated rival New York Yankees. Despite the hiccup in the offseason, the Red Sox made the playoffs as a wild card and faced off against the New York Yankees in the American League Championship Series. The Red Sox fell to an 0-3 deficit.
John Olerud.
And it seemed that it was all but over in Game 4 of the American League Championship Series, but an amazing comeback effort and a walk-off home run by David Ortiz forced a Game 5. In Game 5, the Boston Red Sox won again with David Ortiz's walk-off hit.
Run into the plate, and he can keep on running to New York. Game 6 tomorrow night.
Red Sox won again in Game 6, even with Alex Rodriguez trying to slap his way to a Yankees victory. And it came down to Game 7.
And then he complained about it like a baby.
Game 7, it wasn't even close. With home runs by David Ortiz and Johnny Damon.
And here's Ortiz. He rips one into
the moment that happened, it was like, yep, it's over.
You knew.
You just knew it. That one was like, yep, it's really over.
Is that Jeff Nelson?
No, that was whoever replaced Kevin Brown.
And an amazing pitching performance by Derek Lowe.
Derek Lowe.
The Red Sox won the American League Championship Series, being the first team in Major League Baseball history to win off an 0-3 deficit, and would eventually win the 2004 World Series, breaking the curse.
back to full. Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions.
And to you, Boston fans, if there is anyone to thank for the breaking of the curse of the Bambino, it is the Seattle Mariners for their boneheaded
You're welcome, Boston. You're
1996 and 1997. So thank them every opportunity you can. And thanks for watching. If you really enjoyed these nostalgic videos like this one, hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell.
Oh, yeah, and check out these ones. How the Mariners built the Yankees dynasty of the 90s and how the Mariners got Yordan Alvarez to the Houston Astros. Now, what was your favorite part of that video?
Boy, some of the memories of losing these guys to Boston. It was fun seeing some of the old highlights. I forgot some of those games. I remember the one in 97 they blew to Boston. They actually had another one in 98, very similar, that they blew early in the season with Slocum on the hill as well. But, I mean, yeah, I knew they had traded I forgot about Derek Lowe, to be honest. I remember Veritek and Ortiz. I don't remember Ortiz as a fan, outside of Boston. I never remember he was in the Mariners system. I knew he was traded, and just kind of the sad history of the Mariners. Unfortunately, it is part of the mystique that I love about baseball. No, that's not Patrick. That's not Patrick. Nope. I know who you're talking about. It's not. But it's part of the mystique that I love about baseball is that with the more trades that go on versus some of the other sports, it is crazy to look back on where some of these guys, came from and in their system. Even now, when I hear about guys that were like in the Mariners system that were traded in little trades 4 or 5 years ago, it's pretty crazy to look at. But it's amazing how things that you don't think of at the time can. I mean, David Ortiz is the most important player for the Red Sox, and that
Yeah, and
yeah,
he was not even supposed to be like Boston picked him up like
yeah,
they picked him up with undervalue because he was mostly injured with the Minnesota Twins, which is why they cut him. Couldn't find a trade partner because they thought the injury just wasn't worth it. And next thing you know, he's a
yep,
Hall of Famer.
yep. Well, and it's crazy too. I had forgotten that Ortiz wasn't in Boston until 2003. I thought it was earlier than that for some reason. Like it felt like he was there from like '99 or something, but it was '03. I remember him on the Twins a little bit, and released him. And like you said, it was just kind of I think it was a guy that had some pop, that got on base a little bit, and picked him up. And sure enough, history was made. And the Mariners, like you said, what if those third base injuries didn't happen? What if Russ Davis? Yeah,
Russ Davis didn't break his leg, then Mariners would still have David Ortiz and could have smoothly transitioned to take over for Paul Sorrento rather than shuffling through like David Segui and eventually getting John Olerud. And speaking of John Olerud, the most interesting thing was in the first 3 games that Olerud was playing, Boston won that game, but then he had some random injury. I think it was like towards the end of game 3. And then he was out for the series. And then a Yankee fan came up with a great point. I saw it in a YouTube comment going, he didn't say that John Olerud would have been the stopper of that collapse, but losing him really did hurt. When you do lose someone that plays amazing defense and has the most godly ability to just get on base, it makes
was that the year
difference.
That was the year the Mariners released Olerud, wasn't it? That was 04.
That was 04. They released him to make room for Bucky Jacobson.
Yeah.
And then the other first baseman they had was Tony Clark, but the guy was a strikeout. Oh my God. In 2004, he batted .221 with a .297 on base percentage. And in the LCS against Boston, when he had to take over for Olerud, struck out 9 times, only 3 hits. I can see why they say losing John Olerud really hurts. See, like Mariners had a lot to do with that series.
That's the funny thing is, even looking through that video, I'm like, there's a Mariner right there. There's another one right there that weren't even mentioned. Like Olerud being in that series.
I did that on purpose to remind Mariner fans, like, oh, John Olerud was on there out of all clips, and I didn't even have to.
Even the last out, I think, for the Red Sox thing was Pokey Reese, who the Mariners then signed the next season in 05 and never ended up playing at all, got hurt. I don't remember what he got hurt with, but he was going to be the shortstop in 2005. And
I think he got hurt because remember when he interrupted Richie Sexton and Adrian Beltre's infomercial? He's like, you could slide head first, feet first. Pokey, the stolen base show.
This is the long ball.
And they probably realized, oh crap, I just hurt myself.
I just remember he was on the 60-day IL or DL back then. Can't say DL anymore, but
yeah.
And so even there was not that, but it's just crazy. It's just, and there's many more with the Mariners. I know you're with the Josh Fields trade, like you talked about in your video, to Yordan Alvarez and all that stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if I can come up with more ideas on what these Mariners trades did. Like, who knows? Like, there's a lot of hidden things out there, a lot of hidden gems.
Yeah, if you just follow the trail of it,
Like, one day, maybe I want to, as soon as things develop more, I definitely am interested in exploring that trade where the Mariners traded away Austin Nola and, like, Dan Altavilla, and it turned into Ty France and Andres Munoz. So maybe...
And Taylor Trammell.
Taylor Trammell. So that was by far Jerry DiPoto's best trade, I think. I can think of. I think that is as of now, until Jared Kelenic actually does what he does, because all the Mets really got was Edwin Diaz, and now he's hurt. But that trade actually did a lot more things. It was not only getting Jared Kelenic, it was also getting Justin Dunn, who turned into a package
of Jesse Winker and Suarez.
And Eugenio Suarez. So it's crazy that those two trades alone have pretty much just turned the universe upside down for the Mariners. It was those two rebuilding trades.
Yep.
And that Jared Kelenic trade was actually what got me excited for the 2019 season than I was for 2018. Because I remember 2018, I was like, great, another maybe 80-win season.
Yep.
But then the next season, I was like, okay, it's finally a full-scale rebuild. Let's see how they actually do it this time. Because they never committed to it. Right. And I still liked it when they're like, hey, Jerry, how do you think they're going to do? Oh, yeah, we're tanking. Like, he said it in the most professional way, but he basically said, yeah, and even Scott Service admitted that we're tanking. He's like, oh, yeah, with Oakland and Houston up there, yeah, we could use some time to just catch up with them eventually.
That's essentially what their thought process was. We're not going to catch these two teams with what we have. And I'm with you. I liked what they did and the trades they made. And I think the Nola one's more fascinating to me because the Diaz one was super high profile. I think everybody kind of universally thought the Mariners made a really good move there with that trade. Trading a closer that you're not going to need in a rebuild and getting rid of Cano's contract. But the Nola one was just in the middle of the COVID season, kind of under the radar. And I mean, to get Ty France, Andres Munoz, and like you said, I'm thinking of Dunn. Dunn was in the Kelenic trade. But, I think that one right there, both those really set up the rebuild and finished it off pretty much completely. And I'm trying to think. It's amazing when you follow the track, though, of where some of these guys go, like you said. And then Justin Dunn ends up being in the trade to the Reds. And then Winker's traded, to the Brewers. So it's amazing how these trades have have that trail.
All it takes is one trade to do something. But I think that is it. Like, we went over a lot. We went over the Red Sox, quickly went over the Braves, maybe some possible roster moves. And now we have pretty much reached the end. And I think this was a very fun show. We had 3 nice viewers today. Maybe it looks like they were some from your audience. So
cool.
Yeah. So if you are Gunny Studios or anyone of the J Trends podcast, give me that subscription. And anyone that was on my audience, give J Trends podcast a subscription, as we would love to grow together as 2 channels in the future, because YouTube has endless opportunities. And right now we're just grinding like hell.
Amen. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Always enjoy it.
Yep. Thank you. And hopefully we will see each other next week, as we do intend. Our goal is to do at least once a week to do a show. So we'll keep you guys updated on what we do these coming forward. But until then, subscribe to both of us and have a good night, and go Mariners. And let's get that 2 out of 3 or that sweep.
Let's do it. Have a good night.